Services, also John Finch from Kitchen Willet Hydro to talk about Save On Energy. And, well, Ian, I know you paid close attention to the federal budget last week, and that is why we'll be chatting a little bit later with Ms. Finlay.
Yeah, it was interesting the last couple of days because everyone said that it was a sort of stand-pat budget, not much in it, but there were some local things that are items in the budget that are important locally. Actually, our friend Gregory, who's just going to meet the minister at this very moment, was in Ottawa, and he was in the budget lockup. So I think when we may not have time this show because we got lots to cover with the minister, but we should talk to him about maybe next week or the week after about that experience because that would have been interesting. But the federal budget did have a couple of things, and we'll get to these. But obviously, the deficit projection of basically being in balance this year, and certainly next year coming into a sizable surplus. And there's been some controversy, from Tuesday with some of the followed Wednesday, Thursday. About Minister Flaherty saying income splitting, maybe not. Maybe there's other ways to give tax relief. So we'll maybe touch on with the minister on that. But a number of things locally. Infrastructure, and Peter Braid, who's the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Transport and Communities, announced has been working on the new dollars that are in for infrastructure for communities right across the country. So that's obviously of interest to us as a community here. Skills development and the program of actually having a business partner with government to get the skills upgrades that existing employees need to remain competitive. So that was interesting. And the research and development. And we had Gary on, Minister Goodyear, a week or two ago, and talking about how to making some additional investments in infrastructure or in research and development to create opportunities for commercialization and growth. So there are some things locally that I think are pretty important.
Do you give any credence to Charles Seuss's comment that Ontario has been unfairly treated in terms of its reduced transfer payment from the provinces? He went out the next day and he was yelling and screaming about how Ontario's been treated unfairly in this budget.
I'll leave the politicians to have the bun fight amongst themselves. All I can say is what I think is absolutely true is the last time we had big deficits, the federal Liberal government eliminated the deficit, which needed to be done, by downloading to the provinces and cutting transfers for education and health. This government hasn't done that. You can make all kinds of other arguments of what's good or not. So I think it's a little. I would be cautious about casting stones if I was the province of Ontario. I think they're having real issues. They're a government that's in trouble. We'll I think be talking a little bit about the provincial by-elections, which I think when we know now that the Conservatives won one, the NDP won, I think the Liberals are getting pretty nervous that there's going to be an election, and I think that they may be more concerned about their electoral chances as opposed to and wanting to pick a fight with the federal government versus there being a real issue there, because they have increased to all provinces the transfers and made that stable. And we'll ask Minister Finlay about that, because I think that's certainly a bone of contention. But you know what, we with the provincial election, I think the by-elections, the net result is, I would be astounded if we're not into an election in the spring, because I think the NDP won one, the Tories did. I think there's just an appetite for one way or the other, regardless of who wins. We gotta have that discussion and have that vote and move on, because there's lots of big issues to deal with.
I was really surprised that Flaherty and Mr. Harper got on different pages with regard to income splitting. Mr. Harper had to take a lot of questioning about it in the House, and Mr. Flaherty seemed to go his own way on it. I'm not sure how that's allowed to happen. I guess he's by his own admission, he speaks his own mind, but he basically changed his mind on what was a campaign promise in 2011.
I gotta say, I'm not one that actually buys that view. I know that probably sells more newspapers and with the national media. I think it was probably by design. I think when you're stepping back from something, and frankly, this was a commitment that they made. I think maybe because of circumstances, and when you actually do the analysis, it's probably not the best way to spend the money, or certainly even if you're going to scale back the size of that particular commitment, that's what they're doing, is stepping it back. I don't think that there's any room between the Prime Minister and Minister Flaherty on this. I think it will be problematic with maybe the federal caucus. But when you look at the challenges that this country faces, and some want to spend more, others say tax relief is the way to go. If you're going to do tax relief, this would not be by anyone. When you have the C.D. Howe Institute, which is as far right-wing think tank as you have, and the Center for Policy Alternatives, which is as far left as you can get, agreeing on something, you know that you've got the wrong policy or it needs to be relooked at. And I think that's where we're at on income splitting. But I don't think there's a lot of room, and certainly I think they've cleaned it up in the last couple of days. But the provincial election, we do. I'm very excited. We've been on our rant and continue to be on our rant about fair tendering. It's something that we've asked Tim Hudak about. We'll be asking Leader Horvath, who's with the leader of the NDP, on February 28th, and she's going to be on doing our show for a full hour when she comes to speak in town. And then we have Premier Wynne on March 12th. So that's something that both our chambers have been working on, both those issues, and it's particularly relevant. I mean, encourage people to register and come in here because we're going to have a firsthand view of what the leaders are test driving in the upcoming provincial election. And I know we're going to come back right after break. I see Greg walking
Greg's
down.
coming in now.
He's coming in now, and there he is. And
he hasn't changed. He looks exactly the same.
He looks exactly the same. That hair didn't move.
Poor Greg.
But I think we'll maybe do more on this next week. But we're very pleased. Obviously, Save on Energy, hugely important as our title sponsor. Gallagher's Travel, which we've talked about last week, and we've got a second spotlight sponsor, and I guess I'm going to kill the lead. But the Cowan Group, which is a big supporter of both our chambers, has come on board as our second spotlight sponsor. So we're very pleased with the support we get from the business community and from 570, and look forward to a great year of shows.
All right, we're coming back with Diane Finley, Minister of Public Works and Government Services, next as the Business to Business show continues on 570 News.
We'll return with more Business to Business. Powered by Save on Energy, featuring local businesses, solutions, and success stories, connecting community through business on 570 News.
Welcome to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. And with the release of the federal budget last week, we are delighted to have with us Diane Finley. She is the Minister of Public Works and Government Services to kick things off, and she's donating her time to us today. So let's get right to it. Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, and Greg Durocher, President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Ms. Diane Finley. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Gentlemen?
Yes, it's wonderful to have the minister here with us, and I know Ian and I were really excited that you did agree to come on and talk with us a little bit about the budget. I think a lot of people look at it and say it wasn't a very exciting budget, but I think, quite frankly, from a business perspective, it was an exciting budget.
Well, I think it was it was a steady as she goes budget. Mm-hmm. No new big spending, equally no new taxes, and we're going to balance the budget by 2015.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no. Obviously, some interesting things that we picked out specific to the chambers that we've been interested in. One was the skills development program that the federal government is now going alone. Now, you had some dealings with that in your previous portfolio. But that's important for business. That there was a lot of back and forth with the provinces and the federal government. Tell us about that program and how that's going to come off the page, because that's really important for business here that are trying to either retool or give their workers new skills.
Well, I'm glad you asked about that because, quite frankly, the skills mismatch that we're facing right across the country is probably the single biggest barrier to our economic growth. We've got a lot of people who are unemployed and looking for work, but at the same time, in really high unemployment areas, we've got employers who can't find the skills they need. And it's a skills mismatch. So the Canada Job Grant Program is designed to get employers to invest in the training of someone that they want, so that when that person comes out, they'll have the skills the employer needs and a guaranteed job. That's a win-win-win all the way around, and I'm really excited about it. I hope that the provinces do decide to sign on to this. The budget made provision, so if the provinces choose not to participate, then we'll go it alone to give employers and workers skills that are needed.
So just to clarify that, when it was announced last year, and it's unfortunate that 12 months has passed without a dollar flowing and a person being trained through this new program, but we'll leave that for. We're not talking politics today; we're talking policy. So, but specifically, when it was announced last year, it was 5,000 by a business, 5,000 from the federal government, and 5,000 from the province. So was announced is you're proceeding with the program, hope that the provinces will come on, but if they don't, that the federal government will be prepared to put in 10,000, or effectively the 2/3 again with the 5,000 from the business. Is that where it's heading?
I'm not sure where those discussions are going right now, but I do know that if the provinces choose not to skill up their people for the jobs that are really needed, then we're prepared to help Canadians in that regard.
So dollars will flow regardless of where the province is. The details to be determined, but dollars will flow this year one way or the other.
That's the plan. We do have agreements in place for the last year that we're covering it, but that program just didn't have enough scope and accountability. And so while the provinces were training people, they weren't giving them the skills they needed for the jobs. So you had a whole bunch of people who were trained, but not for the jobs.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of cheating this morning because I've got this 147-page diatribe of the budget that I picked up when I was in Ottawa. But some of the interesting things going through there that don't really get the big highlight, but are probably a highlight from our members' perspective, is the recommendations of Canada's Public Policy Forum on internal trade. We always talk about these trade barriers between the provinces, and what initiatives is the federal government doing to try and help provinces reduce or eliminate those trade barriers? Seems odd that we're, out in the world developing free trade agreements, and we have those sticky wickets here in the country that we're all trying to rejuvenate.
Well, it gets so silly, and I can tell you one story from a number of years ago. I was living in Winnipeg, and we went to visit friends at their cottage in Kenora. And there were actually police at the border, the Manitoba-Ontario border, checking to make sure that people weren't taking beer across the line to and from the cottage.
Only in Canada, eh?
And, that's just plain silly. Mm-hmm. We have a big problem in that regard with professionals, certified people who've been trained, teachers, nurses, welders, moving across the country and having their credentials recognized. And so a few years ago, when you ask what the federal government's doing, about 5 years ago, I was part of a First Minister's meeting where all the premiers were unanimous in their support of removing those barriers so that we could get an efficient or a more efficient labor market. We were bringing people in from offshore who had to qualify in one of 13 provinces. If they did that, they couldn't move. Even our own people couldn't move from one province to another and practice their skills. So that's one place to start. We also supported Dan Elbis's private members bill that now will allow wine to flow freely from one province to another so that all Canadians and all Ontarians can enjoy BC wine. They can enjoy our good Ontario wine. There's such a long way to go, but we're committed to making that sensible change.
I think it just seems to be like almost a protectionist attitude, and and yet we're out in the world trying to, reduce those barriers of protectionism. And I guess it's. I remember having conversations about the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, and the folks around the dairy industry and the cheese makers are saying, "Oh man, we're going to be, put out of business because of this." And quite frankly, I think we're opening up new markets for Ontario and Canadian cheeses to be bought in Europe. It's, you got as every much opportunity to sell there as you do locally. So the same thing would apply to wine, I would assume.
Well, in terms of the dairy industry, they're looking at opportunities to go into a 500 million person market.
Yeah.
That's tremendous opportunity.
You're listening to Business on 570 News. We're in conversation with Diane Finley. She's the Federal Minister of Public Works and Government Services, in conversation with Ian McLean and Greg Durocher. Ian, next question to you.
Well, Minister, things that locally that has been was of interest of the budget. There was additional $500 million that was going to be put towards research across the country into universities, and obviously with University of Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier, and it's right across the region now, because they're not only in Waterloo but in Kitchener and Brantford and closer to your riding, and Conestoga College. What are the types of programs that the government's trying to incent when you're putting more money into that research in those research funds in those institutions over the next 10 years?
Well, we're all competing in a global market these days for virtually everything. And if we're going to compete successfully, we have to have new innovative products. And governmentally, Canada leads the world in investing in that. Not all of our private sectors do, and we've got to partner with them, work with the universities and colleges to develop new technologies, innovation. We've got to really step up our game on that if we're going to be successful competing internationally. And that's why our government is investing more in projects and in our colleges and universities so that we can develop world-breaking technologies and processes that are going to help our companies compete successfully abroad.
I think, in all fairness to people who are maybe saying this was a boring budget and there wasn't much to it, there is, some exciting aspects related to infrastructure, and there's $53 billion in the budget for 2014 and 15 for infrastructure projects. Maybe we should highlight some of the reasons why we're doing that as well.
Well, we know that there's an infrastructure deficit right across the country. It goes back many years in its creation. Our government has already invested more than any previous government in infrastructure, especially during the recession, because it created jobs, but it also has the added benefit of making cargo transport a lot easier, which helps our companies be more successful. We want to continue with that, with the job creation, with making sure that we have the roads, the bridges, the airports that are needed for us to be commercially competitive.
Are we still talking then that the Windsor-Detroit Bridge is going to get built someday?
Absolutely. The Prime Minister is so committed to that, and there was over $400 million in this year's budget just dedicated
for the planning of that and getting it prepared.
Well, yesterday on I think it was Power and Politics, I was watching. I was trying to put myself to sleep, but I was watching that last night. And your colleague Peter Braid, good friend of ours, and been on the show before, was on talking about the infrastructure, the investments that are being made. And as usual, and I think I want to bring some clarity to this, is David McGuinty, and in particular, was saying the numbers are a sham. It's not $53 billion over the next period of time. That's double counting. Is it $53 billion or not? Because that's clearly what Peter was saying. If you include the gas tax and the transfers for HST or GST rebates, the new money that's being announced and the money that exists. So he's talking about that, and that hundreds of millions will flow this year. Because that's one of the worries is there time to get the projects done for this construction season. So bring some clarity to that for right now, because they were having a bun fight on Power and Politics yesterday.
Well, it is true. We are investing this money. And let's remember, it's our government that took the gas tax. First of all, we doubled it. Then we made it permanent, and we indexed it. So municipalities right across the country will know how much to expect. And one of the things that we did was we broadened the eligible use of those funds. So municipalities can choose whether they want to invest in brownfield redevelopment so that they've got the land for industrial use, whether they want to invest in recreation centers, whether it's going to go into local roads and bridges. But beyond that, there's also a lot of funding there for bigger projects, major highways, major bridges, because all of these things are in the state where we need to develop. LRT around here. That's been a hot topic for a number of years now. We've been working towards that. But municipalities are going to have more money than they've ever had before. They're going to have to decide what their priorities are, and they're going to have the flexibility to do that.
All right, we're going to come back with more with Diane Finley, Federal Minister of Public Works and Government Services, as Business to Business continues right here on 570 News.
We'll be right back with more Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy. Call in with your questions at star 570, 570-2545 or 1-800-570-5715. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy and co-sponsored by our good friends at Gallagher's Travel. We continue now in conversation with Diane Finlay.
Well, Diane, we were talking before the break about the increase in research for post-secondary institutions across the country over the next 10 years, which is over and above what you've already committed. But one of the things we talked about, and we had your colleague Gary Goodyear, Minister responsible for FedDev, and we were talking about some of the programs that are actually trying to take that research and commercialize it so that you actually have businesses that are taking that research, making it into a product or a service that produces jobs and creates wealth. So talk a little bit about, if not specifically, what the philosophy is around those investments in research and how it translates to commercialization.
Well, our main goal is creation of jobs, economic growth, and long-term prosperity. To do that, we have to develop new products, new processes. That's why we're investing in research. But having the new ideas and the new technology, new processes, isn't enough. You've got to be able to sell them worldwide. And that's why, particularly through FedDev, we are investing and helping companies get the assistance they need to commercialize their products. That can lead to huge sales. Even within my own department, we have the Office for Medium and Small Enterprise, and that partners companies that have got new ideas with government departments who will trial those products, find out how well they work, give the company feedback, and that will then help them commercialize their product because A, it's going to be better, B, they can now list the Government of Canada as one of their clients.
Yeah, and that's been a big problem for small and medium-sized business, saying there's no way I can get a government contract because I'm not big enough. I don't know the secret handshake, and I don't have a consultant to get me in the door. So those types of programs are important as well.
So and that's just part of what our government is doing in this regard. But in fact, I just sent letters to all my colleagues this week saying, here are some new products that are coming out in which you might be interested, that are specific to your needs. Here's a go for it. We'll finance the part of it while you trial it, and you get the benefit, and the company gets to learn more. And with your endorsement, then the opportunity for exports especially is just opened up wide. And I've heard from a lot of companies that have been through this, and they love it. It's made such a huge difference for them.
Now we have something, and this isn't as regional minister for Southwestern Ontario, we have our Manufacturing Summit 2014 that Greg and I, along with 3 other community partners, are presenting. We'd invite you to come down to that because part of what we're trying to do is to support the manufacturing sector, but in particular saying what are the companies here that have those advanced manufacturing capacities and utilizing technology and to be able to compete not only in Ontario but across the country and across the globe. And I think that's part of what I was getting at in terms of the research and the commercialization is how are we putting those things in those new technologies into practice for existing companies so that they can grow and create jobs.
Now, as I say, there are a number of programs across the government. My office includes the Office for Small and Medium Enterprise, and they spend all their time reaching out to small business that is developing these ideas, that has the potential for growth, and helping them through it, helping them connect with government, other potential opportunities. It's exciting stuff, and every time I get to go to one of these operations and get a tour, I come away just so encouraged by the intelligent energy or energy of intelligence that we have and the opportunities for growth. It's just tremendous.
And you become highly skilled as well, as you told me. You shared me a story about your welding experiences as well.
And that helps too.
Minister Finlay, I know you want to get around to the big tamale, which is really important to us, the apprenticeship tuition program. But I want to switch just quickly to the consumer side because there was a little bit in there for the consumer. I'm not a really big fan of government saying how much companies can charge for different things because I think, the free enterprise system, it should be driven by market acceptance or not. However, that aside, there was an interesting comment from Minister Flaherty about trying to find a balance or reduce the difference in cost from Canadian goods that are, also sold in the U.S. for much lower. How is that going to work? How are we going to, given the fact that our dollar is quite a bit different, certainly today, how is that going to work, though, and how are we going to find that balance?
Well, last year, the Senate did a very in-depth study on that issue, And I think we've all had the experience where we go to the States shopping, and a product that was made in Canada sells for less in the U.S. at retail price, not just on sale, than it does right here at home. That's not fair. We also know that, and the Senate learned this, that some companies set their prices based on the country they're in, with the attitude that, oh, well, Canadians are nice, polite people. They won't complain if we charge them more. And so the Senate is going to, or I should say, the Senate looked into this. Minister Flaherty rightly says that this isn't fair, and he's looking at a number of ways that we can address this.
Very good.
Well, one of the other things that, and we'll come to let you finish on the high note with the deficit projections and what's going to happen moving forward, because there's a little bit of news there. But you were talking earlier, and I think we should mention, which is really important for not only this region, but for right across the country, the tax incentive for apprentice and that whole program. So tell us about what the new things that were announced in the budget with respect to that program.
Well, over the last 8 years, I had the great privilege of introducing the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant, the Apprenticeship and Completion Grant, and now this budget has brought in something that's going to fill in the financial gap for students who are going through apprenticeship, and that is an interest-free loan to get them through, because too often the way the program is structured, they don't qualify for EI. The actual in-school portion is too short to qualify for Canada's student loans. So I think this is going to be a huge help in meeting the needs of would-be apprentices to get those tickets in the skilled trades. This is one of the most wonderful opportunities for young people. If they're looking at something to do after high school, get into the skilled trades. There is such a shortage right across the country.
And we hear
jobs pay so well.
Yeah, and we've heard about that from our friend Ken Cobley from the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, that they've got huge shortages there, but there are also shortages here in the province of Ontario, and they are well-paying jobs. So that's good news for those. And
I think what it does too is it allows organizations, certainly like ours, to speak to our secondary school individuals and even the counselors there and say, don't be afraid of directing 50% of the students who will not get a post-secondary education because of financial needs or availability of getting a seat.
Or interest.
Or interest, and now there's that avenue that they may be able to go. So I think this is going to be a very good program for Canadians in general.
Well, and especially for rural areas like mine, where we lose too many of our young people to the city. I mean, all of us in rural Ontario, we still need plumbers. We need welders. I had to hire a gas fitter the other day. They're few and far between.
Yeah.
And so these are opportunities for young people to get skills in good-paying jobs and allow them to stay in beautiful, bucolic southern Ontario that we all know and love.
Now, I know you're, as all good ministers, you're going to be on the run. So your staff are giving us the evil eye because we've kept you here longer than we said we would, which was intentional, by the way. But just before you leave, and I think this is important, we've talked off the top about the budget projection this year for the deficit is $2.9 billion. There is a contingency, so I guess to Greg's point, in theory, if things go well, we could be out of deficit this year. But there has been some controversy. We're talking about already next year, other things being equal, that we'll be into a sizable surplus. That one of the commitments that the government made, and everyone knows about it, is on what was called income splitting. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of days about, is the government looking at either backing away from that or looking at new ideas for tax relief? Because that's really the question. I, for one, think it's probably a good idea to take a step back from that and say, is that the absolute best idea of utilization to unlock the potential that's in the economy? And I think there's lots of points of view that need to be looked at on that. So talk a little bit about the deficit and what the plan is for not only discussing within government, but across the country about what to do when we get back into surplus.
Okay, well, if you're planning your household budget, you always have to have a contingency fund because you don't know if your washing machine or your dryer is going to fail or your fridge, and you've got to replace it right now. You can't afford to wait. So you always have to have a contingency fund. Unfortunately, in the last year, we've seen flooding out in Calgary. We've seen the Lac-Mégantic situation. We have to have a contingency fund in case bad things happen, because we want to be able to support Canadians in their time of need. So that's a legitimate part of the budget. I think we'd be irresponsible if we didn't have that in. Just like anyone who's running their household budget, if they're running so close to the line that they can't handle an emergency, that's not responsible for the family. Going forward, right now we are still in deficit, so there's no point in speculating on what we would do. Next year, the plan is to have a surplus, small one, and we'll look at what to do with it at that point in time. Right now, I'm focused on this really great budget that the finance minister has brought in this year that's going to get us back to balanced budget without raising taxes, without cutting transfers to the provinces or to individuals. And that was, if you remember the 90s, the federal government slashed healthcare transfers to the provinces by 25%. Mm-hmm. We didn't do that. In fact, we locked in so the provinces are getting 6% more in their healthcare transfers each and every year. That's enshrined because we want to protect Canadians. So I'm really proud of the job that the finance minister has done on this.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Diane Finley, our guest, Federal Minister of Public Works and Government Services. Gentlemen?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. It's always a privilege to speak to you. It's certainly a privilege to have you come and join us here and discuss this boring but really exciting budget, I think, from a business perspective.
And I think that what we should have you back and come and do a speech with a joint event with both the chambers to talk specifically about that program for small, medium-sized business, because while it is a great program, not enough people know about it. Mm-hmm. And, I have 1,800 members. Greg has 1,900 members. Most of them would fit into that small, medium-sized category. Absolutely. And should know about your program to try and allow them the opportunity to do business with government.
I'd be delighted.
All right. You're listening to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy and our co-sponsor, Gallagher's Travel.
Business to Business, powered by Save On Energy, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. Businesses support each other. They support the community. Now back to Business, powered by Save On Energy on 570 News.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. And we haven't talked to John in a long time. Here to talk more about Save On Energy is our good friend John Finch from Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. John, welcome back.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here.
And it's always good to have you. And we've in the past we've talked about how do we get involved, and a number of the segments we've done have been specific programs. But it is for many of our members are so busy. They're looking for the easiest way to sort of start to get involved and to take advantage of the programs that are available through Save On Energy and the local utilities. So why don't we talk today a little bit about your breakfast series? It's an ongoing thing you do throughout the year. Tell us about how often those things happen, generally speaking, and the types of program or types of things that get talked about when you have these breakfast series.
Yeah, Ian, it's pretty exciting. We got a good event, good lineup this year again. We run breakfast series throughout the year, and we offer these to small, medium, large businesses. And we run these breakfasts probably every month is what we try to keep on schedule with. And each breakfast has a different theme. They're all geared towards educating the customer and helping the customer understand more about how they use energy and how it's a controllable cost in their organization.
So that would include energy reduction strategies, maybe equipment, physical equipment changes that can reduce your consumption and your costs. What are some are these free events? Or you have to register? How do people go about finding out about this?
Yeah, so if you're interested to learn more and attend one of our breakfast sessions throughout the year, they're free events. So I encourage businesses to call in to either Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, Cambridge and North Dumfries, or Waterloo North Hydro, and find out more about what breakfasts are being offered. Like you said, some of them focus on technology. We may go and do an overview of lighting, HVAC systems, and other strategies that you can implement within your business to help you save. And even if it's educating you on your electricity bill and helping you understand where the charges are coming from, it all helps to empower the customer to learn more and, again, control that cost.
Now, I think it might have been actually the last time you were on. We talked about some of the incentives that are out there in terms of some of the if you make a capital investment, that there are recoverable costs which go right to your bottom line or reduce your expense line. So what are some of the things that, would you talk about those programs as well? I mean, I presume that you're letting people know, come to this event, here's a strategy, here are the programs that are available, and here's the upfront cost savings as well as the downstream. Are those the types of things that you do?
That's exactly it, and we'll go into those sorts of details. But really, I mean, the breakfasts are for everyone because it's a first step to get engaged. We offer incentives, and we've had lots of sessions talking about the incentives that we offer for the different technologies and efficiencies within a business. But just to come and be a part of the educational part and start to learn, empower your employees, it's a really great opportunity.
So just before we wrap up, in the past we've had at our Energy and Environment Forum, well, maybe we'll talk next show about the Energy and Environment Forum, which we host along with Save On Energy and others in the business community. But we've had some of your clients that have actually used it, like Justin from Canadian Tire, one of the Canadian Tires. But you have other examples of folks that have come to these breakfast sessions that have started down the process of reducing or making those investments and seeing the savings. We should probably try and maybe talk about that in one of our upcoming sessions, so people can have a real life example of, hey, someone started at a breakfast series. Here's what they did, and here's the type of savings. So maybe we come back armed with that next time we talk, because I think that would be a good.
Sounds like a great session,
John. Great talking to you and promoting Save On Energy. It's a great one. Go to saveonenergy.ca for more. Okay, Ian, what have you got coming up? I know, the Business Excellence Awards, which I'm delighted to be a part of at the Rogers Radio table.
Yes, and that goes to speak that absolutely anyone is invited to the gala. Actually, we're very pleased this year. First time since I've been there, we're absolutely sold out. In fact, I think we're 867 people. It's going to be a great night, and that's February 20th at Bingham's, hosted by Megan Furman from CTV. We have... I think 12 awards, 87 nominees, and some of them are just fantastic. So it's a great night of celebrating about what business has to offer, or the best of business in Kitchener.
I've always wondered this. It's such a great event, and an honor to be in attendance each year. How do the various businesses become nominated in the various categories?
Well, it's open nomination process, so people can, in theory, nominate themselves. Most of the time, it's a client or a customer who says, "Hey, you know what? I had a great experience with such and such," or as an example, the young entrepreneurs is people going, "Hey, that fellow that I saw is like Mike Maxwell, who's Maxwell's Music House. He's won a couple of awards. One was the Young Entrepreneur, then he won Young Business Under 20, because he's really a spectacular young man." And so people nominate because they're saying, hey, we've got a lot to be thankful for and a lot to celebrate in the community. So in any event, the February 20th, that's our big event, and we are sold out, but look for lots of highlights from that, and our award the award winners will be announced right after. I know Greg just has upcoming on February 20th, the same day, but his is a breakfast session with Kevin Wolfley, who's going to talk about e-commerce and a whole bunch of that aspect of things. So please go to CambridgeChamber.com and look for more information on how to register. But that's February 20th. In the morning for a breakfast session. So, and we'll be coming back next week, and I'll give you an update on the winners from the gala. And don't forget, the last thing we have on February 28th, as part of our Provincial Leaders Series that both chambers are putting on, Andrea Horvath speaks on the 28th, and I believe on March 18th, Premier Wynne will be in, and that I think as the by-election results will indicate, we're going to have a spring election. Because I think the NDP and the Conservatives are going to make sure that happens. And so this is a great opportunity to hear what the leaders are going to be talking about during the election.
All right, that wraps up another show. Thank you, Greg and Ian, and our guests, Diane Finley, Minister of Public Works and Government Services, and John Finch of KW Hydro. Thanks as well to our producers, Candace Cobbing and Catherine Drake. You've been listening to Business on 570 News.